Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Polly Barton. I am a Bristol-based translator and co-founder of this festival, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's International Booker Prize Showcase event, hosted by Translated by Bristol. As you may know, Translated by Bristol is as it says on the tin, Bristol-based translation festival, which started last year, set up as a collaboration between two Bristol independent bookshops, Storysmith and Gloucester Road Books, and me. It's essentially a biennial festival, which means that this year is our fallow year. Our plan is to be back next year in 2027 with a full programme. So if you haven't yet signed up to our newsletter or followed us on Instagram, please think about doing that. There's some QR codes downstairs. I said fallow, but really probably it's inaccurate to use that word because even in what is nominally our year off, we're absolutely thrilled to be presenting this showcase in collaboration with the International Booker Prize as our sole 2026 event. The fact that you are here means you are more than likely pressingly aware of how vitally important the International Booker Prize is in bringing wildly exciting translated literature from all around the world to the public consciousness. It doesn't seem like a coincidence that in the 10 years since the International Booker Prize was founded, the profile of and fascination in translated literature has grown with such momentum in the UK. We at Translated by Bristol were really and truly overwhelmed by the reaction to our first festival last year, and we feel that there's no way that would or could have happened without the work that the International Booker Prize are doing. And we're extremely grateful to them for trusting us with what will be our second event with them. So last year we held a showcase event with just the shortlisted translators. And this year, in honour of their 10th anniversary, we're bringing you both the shortlisted translators and authors to discuss their work. And I imagine all other kinds of things. The last thing to say before I go is just to flag the signing system afterwards. So all of the shortlisted books, as well as some of the long-listed books and other works by the authors here today, will be available to buy after the event, and both authors and translators will be signing. But I just want to stress that the signing and the buying happen in different places. So after you leave, after the event finishes, you need to go out the back and go along and down the stairs to your right, and the merch table is opposite the box office. And you can buy your books there, and from there people will direct you to the signing table. And with no further ado, I will hand over to your chair for this evening, the Emeritus Director of the International Booker Prize, Fiametta Rocco. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. So nice to be back here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening to celebrate the shortlist for this year's International Booker Prize, supported by Bookman Philanthropies. Thank you to our partners for this evening, Translated by Bristol, Polly, Dan from Storysmith Books, and Tom from Gloucester Road Books. And thank you to Bristol Beacon for hosting us in this lovely, lovely room. Hello to those of you who are joining us online. I'll be your host this evening. I'm not going to say very much now because there's lots to come, but I would like to set the scene just a little. As Polly said, this year is a particularly special year for the International Booker Prize, as we're celebrating 10 years of the prize in its current form. In 2016, the prize went from rewarding a body of work every 2 years to rewarding a single book every year, and specifically a book translated into English from another language. It became unique in dividing the prize money equally between author and translator, and it has gone on to become the world's most influential award for translated fiction. Which brings us to tonight, a decade later, when our 2026 shortlisted authors and translators are coming together for the very first time, ahead of the announcement of the 11th winner in just 4 days' time. If you haven't already familiarized yourself with this year's shortlist, I promise you are going to discover 6 remarkable books. Throughout the evening, I'm going to invite each shortlisted author and translator pair to join me on stage to read an extract from their shortlisted title, and then we'll have a little discussion. Before we get to that, though, I want to tell you from the get-go that we do not yet know the winner. That will be announced on Tuesday, May the 19th. I don't know anything more than all of you, so please don't read anything into our enthusiasm for these books as meaning anything more than what it is. You know what they say about living in the moment? Well, tonight we are living in the shortlist moment. Any one of these 6 books could win the International Booker Prize 2026. So let's get started by taking a look at the 6 books in the running with this compilation video of our International Booker Prize 2026 shortlist films. These films were directed by Holly Blakey and filmed in the South Bank Centre in London.
Well then, great, said Bob. Terrific meeting. Let's go ahead. Jake clapped his hands. His enthusiasm seemed irrepressible. His whole body trembled with it. Terrific meeting. Just the best. No, said Pabst. They both looked at him, not indignantly, but uncomprehendingly, as if something inexplicable had occurred before their eyes, a wonder of nature, a mystery such as the world had never seen.
I swear to the ruler of the Albanian Alps, Lake Tukagini, that to my dying day, I shall not touch a man. I shall not touch a man, and I shall preserve my virginal innocence, renouncing for all times the woman in me, renouncing forever the woman in me.
Hunting men is a little more painstaking than hunting wild animals. The fragility of the human body means they don't get very far. Although the darkness of night is softened by the full moon, Melquiades has an even greater advantage in night hunting because he's colorblind, just like wild boars. His night vision is exceptional, and his range of sight far better than other men's.
People should eat at the same table, only if they're of equal rank.
This is why I can eat with my fiancé, and can eat at a large banquet where there are people of all ranks, but cannot eat one-on-one with you.
Perhaps not with Aoyama sensei, the mainlander writer. But what about with Aoyama Chizuko, the human being?
Sweets and kisses in the streets. And you didn't even notice the transition. One minute, we were sitting side by side and silent at home. The next, we were part of the roiling, bellowing crowd, part of the movement, part of the struggle. Surab's voice and mine flung the slogans into the cold winter sky. Our smoky voices, no longer the voices of children.
In another time, they would have felt slightly ashamed. But practical, serene, resolute, intensely relaxed, grasping, asking a great deal of life with the most perfect innocence. They had next to no modesty or discretion, were rarely embarrassed by anything. In that, those clever little barbarians, my daughters amazed me.
So the first book we're going to be discussing tonight is She Who Remains by Renee Karabash, translated from Bulgarian by Isidora Angel. I'd like to invite them both to the stage. Renee will read to us first from the book in the original Bulgarian, and then Isidora will read the same passage from her translation into English.
Good evening, everyone. Белези. Днес мама ми облече синя рокля. Допълзях до баща ми да му се покажа, а той ми каза, остави ме да чуя новините, което сигурно означава, че съм много хубава. Къде беше? Пак си цялата в брашно. Играх си с Дана във воденицата. Кое време стана? Селото приказва, помъкнала се с нацане внучката. Ръката на баща ми надвиснала над мен, като гръблива птица. Полите на майка ми останали във въздуха, повдигнати от вятъра на неговата ръка. Часовника спира, остават само виковете и пулсиращата вена на челото на баща ми. Часовника дърпа юздите си назад и ме връща там, където искам да бъда сега. С Дана лежим една до друга на големия мелничен камък. Помръдваме в утробата на воденицата. От какво ти е този белег? Ами брах шипки за майка ми и удрах лицето си в храстите. Твоя белег от какво е? Играх с баща ми на самолет, аз качах, той ме хващаше, изпусна ме и си сцепих веждата. Извини ли се? Извиних и се. Извини ли му се? Извиних му се. После играем на една игра. Ти шипка ли си? Самолет съм. Ти самолет ли си? Шипка съм. Белезите светят в тъмното. За първи път се виждаме.
Scars. Today my mother put me in a blue dress, so I crawled over to my father to show him me, and he said, "Let me listen to the news, which must mean I'm very beautiful." "Where were you, Beckia? You're covered in flour again." "I was playing with Dana at the watermill." "Look at the time. The whole village won't shut up about how you can't stop dragging yourself around with Tana's great-granddaughter." My father's hand hangs over me like a bird of prey. My mother's skirt becomes suspended in the air, billowed by the wind of my father's hand. The clock stops, only screams and the pulsating vein in my father's forehead. The clock pulls the reins and returns me to where I'd rather be. Dana and I lie next to each other on the big millstone. We budge gently in the womb of the watermill. "Where did you get this scar?" I was picking rose hips with my mother, and the bushes scratched my face. "What's your scar from?" "I was playing airplanes with my father. You know, the game where I jump and he catches me. Only he dropped me and I split my eyebrow." "Did you apologize to her?" "I apologized to her." "Did you apologize to him?" "I apologized to him." Later we play a game. "Are you a rose hip?" "I'm a plane." "Are you a plane?" "I'm a rose hip." Our scars glow in the dark. We see each other for the first time.
This is a wild book about a woman living high in Albania's accursed mountains who escapes an arranged marriage by becoming a sworn virgin. Now, last Friday, Dua Lipa spoke at an event that we had in London to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the International Booker Prize. Now, Dua Lipa, of course, is Albanian. And she said, "I thought I knew everything about Albania, but it took a Bulgarian writer, a Bulgarian translator, a small British independent publisher, and an international prize for me to find this story." Renee, this book has a huge following on online, on Book Talk. Why do you think young readers have responded to it so powerfully?
Well, I'm a very hypersensitive person. I don't know if this is because of some trauma response or my astrological sign, which is Cancer, or it's just because who I am. But this energy and this high emotional intensity can be felt in my book, and I think that most of the readers who recognize themselves in my book is people who are not afraid to feel and to be vulnerable. And this intimacy somehow mirrors the way that some people process identity, love, loss, guilt. And these young people, I think that they see themselves in that book, and it validates their feelings. And it's also a book about the struggle to define yourself against the norms, and the political norms, the social norms, the gender norms. And these people are like, they have that uncompromising attitude, and they're born with that power and knowledge to put their boundaries. They know where their boundaries. And if somebody is trying to tell them what to do, they will not agree with that. So I think that this is one of the also another reason why they feel that book so close to them.
Now that's interesting. You've mentioned before the influence that Ismail Kadare has had on you. Of course, the Albanian writer who won the original International Booker Prize in its previous form in 2005. How did he help you unlock this story?
Well, yes, the books of Ismail Kadare helped me a lot about to gather some information. It was the Broken April was the book that my main source of information about these laws, that severe laws of the Kanun. I saw something very interesting because, you know, Albania is a Balkan country like Bulgaria, and we have so much in common. The patriarchal societies. Me myself, I have grown up in a village in the north of Bulgaria, and I felt that same dynamics in the family, like in the books of Kadare. It shows how the patriarchal norms can diminish one person and its identity. But also, I must say that somehow maybe I'm influenced from him because it's about this myth-like, fable-like, fairy tale-like atmosphere of the book. And I think it's because of that blending of realism, but also of that rituals, and you don't know if this is happening and it's real or it's really something like a fairy tale. So it's something in the middle.
That Balkan point is absolutely crucial. I mean, Isadora, you've also said that you wanted to render the writing not just into an English that's timeless, but in a way that allowed the text to reverberate in a deeply Balkan way. What does that mean for a reader here?
Yeah, so I mean, translation for me is something very personal. I'm Bulgarian, and that's my mother tongue, and so I feel like anytime, so the journey that I made from Bulgaria to the Anglophone world just so mimics translation. You know, every time I sort of go back to bring a word or a sentence or a book back. But there's also kind of a guiding philosophy Nabokov talks about when he translates to oblige the music and the meaning of a text. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, the meaning, of course, I carry over in a way that the English reader can understand and identify with. But the music, I really have a loyalty to the Bulgarian melody of a text. And so whenever I can, I try to keep the words in such a way that you get, there's a beat underneath that mimics that Balkan, you know, Bulgarian. You know, even in the one I just read, in the Bulgarian, it's da mu se pokaže, and the translation would be to show him myself or to have him see me, or but I kept it to show him me, because if you say it quickly, it sounds like the Bulgarian a little bit. Da mu se pokaže, to show him me, and so there's just little things throughout the text like that. And there's another part too, which is that Renee is very cinematic in her writing, and so you're immediately put into something very visual. In her books, but I hear the music, and she has these repetitions of lines throughout, and it's very much like the way dance music sounds, like it's the same thing, but it's not. It's building, it's building, it's building, and throughout the book, she repeats the same lines, and they have almost a different meaning. By the time it shows up for the 6th or 7th time, you're in a completely different place in the book. So,
Renee and Isidora, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Our next book is The Witch by Marion Ndiaye, translated by Jordan Stump. Now, unfortunately, Jordan sends his apologies that he hasn't been able to join us in person, but he will be on screen later. Please welcome Marion Ndiaye and her interpreter, Anne Gallia.
Bonsoir. Je coupais par le parking d'un grand magasin de meubles, traversais un quartier de vieilles maisons aux murs pelés, abandonnées quelques années auparavant, habitées de nouveau depuis peu par des familles émigrées de contrées que le Garden Club proposait souvent à ses clients pour leur semaine de rêve. Bonjour ma sœur, dit gravement en me croisant une femme aux longs vêtements jaunes. Elle se glissa dans une maison dont le crépi tombé par plaques montrait les pans de bois pourris d'humidité. Notre pavillon du lotissement, là-bas, loin derrière les hangars et les grandes surfaces de bric-à-brac, me parut alors proscrit, confiné ridiculement dans une retraite confortable et funèbre dont Isabelle elle-même, ma véritable sœur, ne sortait pas, tournant et retournant le long de murs invisibles dans sa luxueuse voiture, faite pour engloutir des routes sans fin, ou l'arpentant dans ses chaussures de course rebondissantes qui lui donnaient l'air, bien qu'elle fût lourde, de s'apprêter toujours à l'envol. « Bonjour, ma sœur, répondis-je, troublée. Le vêtement jaune repassa fugitivement derrière la vitre brisée d'une petite fenêtre au premier étage. J'entendis une voix vive et gaie, puis un grand rire de fillette. Plus haut, du linge mis à sécher dégouttait négligemment sur la façade noircie de fumée et de crasse. J'attendis un instant devant la porte, frissonnant dans mon imperméable, espérant vaguement je ne savais quoi, que la femme ressorte, qu'elle m'apostrophe encore de cette manière si agréable, sûre d'elle et désintéressée. Pouvait-elle être, cette étrangère, ma sœur d'une façon ou d'une autre, et comment le savait-elle?
I cut across the parking lot of a big furniture store and started through a neighborhood of old houses with peeling paint, abandoned some years before and lately lived in a new by families emigrated from countries the Garden Club often suggested to its customers for their dream week of vacation. "Hello, sister," a woman in a long yellow garment said gravely as our paths crossed. She slipped into a house whose rough cast had sloughed off to reveal wooden lats, rotting in the damp air. I found myself thinking that our house in the subdivision, far beyond the warehouses and variety stores, was a place of exclusion, ridiculously confined in a comfortable funeral retreat that Isabel herself, my real sister, never left, instead driving back and forth along invisible walls in her luxurious car built to barrel down endless roads, or stalking the neighborhood streets in the springy running shoes that, despite her girth, always made her seem just about to take flight. "Hello, sister," I answered, troubled. The yellow garment fleetingly glided by behind the broken pane of a small second-floor window. I heard a bright, lively voice, then a young girl's loud laughter. Higher up, laundry hung out to dry was nonchalantly dripping down the building's smoke and grim blackened facade. I waited for a moment by the door, shivering in my raincoat, hoping for, I wasn't sure what, for the woman to come out again, to speak to me again in that very pleasant way, confident and disinterested. Could that foreigner really be my sister in some way or other? And how did she know it?
Marie, there was a time when witches, at least across Europe, used to be burnt at the stake. If you had red hair like I do, that was a good reason to burn somebody for being a witch. But you've created a rather contemporary witch, and she's very, very, very particular. Tell us a little bit about her.
Oui, en effet, vous avez raison.
Yes,
c'est
right.
une sorcière ratée. C'est une sorcière déjà qui n'a pas désiré l'être et qui a reçu ce don qui n'en est pas un, cette malédiction sans pouvoir s'en défaire.
She's in fact a failed witch, and she received this gift, but she doesn't really know how to use it, and she doesn't. It's some kind of malediction on her.
Et c'est une femme finalement qui est une sorcière parce qu'elle ne peut pas être autre chose. C'est une chose qui l'accable et dont elle essaye de faire le mieux qu'elle peut avec, mais elle ne sait pas quoi en faire parce que son rayon d'action, c'est une femme au foyer, en province française, dans les années 90, son rayon d'action de puissance est trop réduit.
She's a domesticated woman, and she doesn't really know what to do with this gift, and she's in the middle of nowhere in France, and she doesn't really have anything else to do, and she's in her own prison, being domesticated.
De ce fait, elle essaye de transmettre le don de la sorcellerie à ses deux filles adolescentes, mais les filles en question, ça ne les intéresse absolument pas. Ça renvoie pour elles à des choses anciennes et sans intérêt qui ne leur serviront à rien dans la vie d'aujourd'hui.
So she's determined to transmit this gift to her twin daughters, but her twin daughters are absolutely not interested in it. They don't understand how that could be helpful, and they're not interested in the ancestors, the lineage to be passed on.
Je suis très heureuse que ce livre soit traduit. Il a été traduit il y a quelques mois. Je l'ai écrit il y a 30 ans environ, et à l'époque, les sorcières n'étaient pas du tout à la mode.
I'm very, very pleased, very happy that this book was translated a few months ago. And at the time, witches were not very much fashionable, and that was written 30 years ago.
Et je pense que j'avais envie de montrer à travers ça la puissance même entravée d'une femme ordinaire qui pouvait trouver dans ce don, même si c'est parfois une malédiction, le moyen de s'extraire de sa vie trop banale.
So the main character, Lucy, we wanted to show how, despite her misery, that she still has power by finding a way to transmit her gift as a witch to her twin daughters.
And what a job she does. Well, now we're going to hear from Jordan Stump, the translator of The Witch.
Hello to everyone. I am so sorry that I can't be there with you. Bonsoir, Marie. I do wish that I could be face-to-face, real-time conversation with you. Alas, circumstances make it impossible, but I'm very grateful to be here, at least in a virtual form. I first read this book when it came out 30 years ago. I was a fan of the publishing house that produced it, and of the other writers who were produced by that publishing house, the Éditions de Minuit. I always thought that Njai's books stood out from those other ones by a sort of elusive quality that made me go on thinking about it long after I'd finished it. So many books tell you in the first pages, here's what this book is, here's how you read it. Her books don't do that. Her books require you to find your way into them to a much greater degree. So after reading this book, for instance, I kept on thinking about it and thinking, I don't know quite what I'm supposed to do with that book. And so with this, I began to teach her books as they came out in my literature classes at the university. Teaching them allowed me to understand them better and better. So that first realization of what there was in this book really came to me from teaching it, because there is so much. It's a small book, so full of substance, and it took me several readings and several teachings to really get at everything that was in it. In this particular book, Lucy has a fascinating voice. She's understated. She has a very jaundiced view of the world around her, very sardonic, not contemptuous, but this silly little American-style subdivision and her husband's ridiculous job and the big box stores that are starting to pop up all over France that are turning every place into a place that looks like every other place. She sees all these things and she notes them, but without judgment. Even her neighbor Isabelle, who is not a particularly sympathetic character, she rarely judges her. So you have to find a voice that is very sharp and explains feelings in some detail, but is at the same time doesn't work particularly hard to explain everything to you. She is almost explaining these things to herself. So it's a very intelligent, very sharp and perceptive and reserved voice that's not particularly emotional. It comes out. There are moments of great emotion, but largely, what she tells us quietly.
Thank you, Marie and Anne, and of course Jordan Stump too. Blue. Do a little. Please welcome Yang Shangji, translator Ling King, along with Jin Lin, who will be interpreting for Yang Shuangji. Shuangji will read from the Mandarin Chinese text, and then Ling King will read the same in English.
大家好，大家好。各位一分。邂逅的春末，我与小千正式见面是在高田家的宴席室。面对我想吃这个、想吃那个的诸多要求，小千全部微笑接受。那个时候，我打从心底发出呼喊：“哦，你该不会是天使吧？”结果完全没想到，其只是擅长玩弄文字游戏的翻译家，根本就是擅长巧妙玩弄人心的小恶魔呢。当然，我指的是那位戴上美丽能面的小千。若非长久相处，肯定不会发现的。不是一味以笑容讨好，小千其实圆融而世故，既谨慎认真，也会嗔怒责难，会调皮说笑。相处起来舒服自在，叫人打从心底喜欢。可是那是假面，是内心疏远的小千。正因为内心疏远，才能进退有度，才能讨人欢心。连抗议和责怪都是假象。说到底，我与小千的关系，不就像是跳华尔兹双人舞吗？尽管也是我默许的结果。然而，实际上，我与小千之间的前进与后退，都是小千的牵引。这样的关系可以说是朋友吗？
When Chi-Chang and I officially met on that late spring day in the Takada's banquet room, she had cordially accepted my many requests about eating this and trying that. In that moment, I'd exclaimed with all my heart, you, are you an angel? Little did I know back then that this interpreter, this player of word games, was in fact a little demon and a player of human hearts. I probably never would have detected this in her had we not spent so much time together. Though she wore a placid smile, Chi-Chang was in fact a worldly person, capable of bending and stretching the rules. She was discreet and scrupulous, but also capable of complaining and chastising, as well as teasing and jesting. This made her a delightful companion and a genuinely likable person, yet it was all a mask. Behind the mask, Chi-Chang's heart was far away. It was thanks to this distance that she was able to be so measured and agreeable. Even her protests and rebukes were all an act. I wondered whether our relationship was in fact like a waltz. Though I had wished for the dance, any real forward or backward movement between us had been led by Chi-Chang. Could this really be called a friendship?
Now, I knew this was a book for me the moment I saw the praise on the back from Fuchsia Dunlop. Now, for those of you who don't know her, Fuchsia Dunlop is our great writer on Asian food. Shangji, food is love. Cooking is love, at least in my life it is. Why did you want to make this a love story?
首先我也得说它，不完全是一种罗曼史的恋爱这样的解读，但我承认它是一个关于爱的故事。
I will have to say that it's not necessarily a story about romance. However, I do agree that it's a story about love.
那么会使用到食物跟所谓的女性之间的关系这样的情谊，是因为我希望我在谈严肃的事情的时候，我们先有一些更亲近日常、更亲近一般人心的外面的这一层包装。
And then, so we talked about food and then the female relationship. I wanted to address some of the more serious topic through something that's easier for everybody to understand.
因为以本质来说，这本书在探讨的是殖民的问题，是人和人之间权利并不平等的故事。这个的确是非常硬的事。那么我想要以柔软一点的方法让大家进入这个故事。
And then this book is more about colonization and then the inequality between people. These are the harder topics to understand. Therefore, I want to depict it in a softer and easier way for people to get into the story.
即使不知道台湾经历过殖民，也许有些人会因为想要看美食、想要看旅行而进来这个故事。接下来他们就知道了台湾曾经经验过什么。
And then, even though people don't know too much about Taiwanese history and they just want to understand Taiwan through food and traveling, through reading the story, they will understand that Taiwan used to have this colonial history.
Lynn, now this book is like an onion, or one of those nesting dolls. That you, as a reader, you peel away the story, and that must have presented quite a challenge for a translator. And there are multiple histories, multiple languages, many serious points, as you say. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to translate this book.
It was very much a challenge, but one that I think every translator would greatly appreciate, because in order to package the onion, Shuangzi had pretended herself to be a translator in the original book, and thus about 1/6 of the original text was already written in translators' footnotes, and forwards and afterwards.
This is a book that operates on many levels.
Yes, it's very metafictional, meta-translational, and that presents just a wide window of opportunity for a real translator, a real translator to go in and really exploit the structure that's already there, to not sacrifice the multiple layers, to not substitute detail and nuance with generalizations or, fast food. So this is it was very much slow and detailed cooking.
And do you find the translation is like cooking?
No. But it would be like if you were on a reality TV show where you are shown a picture of the final product and you are given all the ingredients and you are asked to figure it out.
Just get on with it. Thank you. Yang Shuangzhe and Lin Qin, thank you so much. And Jean Lin, thank you also. Thank you, Polly. That is truly beyond the call of duty. Our next book is The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran. I mean, it's a very topical title, of course. It was written in German by Shada Baziar and translated by Ruth Martin. Please welcome them both. Shada will read first from the book in German, and then Ruth will read from her translation.
Good evening. Wir haben die Bücher unter ihrem Rock versteckt, die altpersischen Gedichte und die politischen Manifeste, alles von Maxim Gorki und die Kindergeschichten von Samad Berangi. Diese würdevolle alte Dame, deren Hand ich manchmal küsste, vor der ich mich immer ein wenig verneigt habe, um nicht größer zu sein als sie, deren Hand in meiner Hand immer zitterte, und ich konnte es Bersot nicht sagen, er musste doch selbst sehen, dass die Hand seiner Mutter zitterte, immerzu. Wie nah ich ihr kam, als sie auf dem Stuhl saß, im Hof, vor dem Feuer. Ich spürte ihren Atem, ihren Duft, ihre Wärme, während ich die Bücher langsam unter ihrem Rock versteckte, damit die Nachbarn nichts bemerkten, wenn sie in den Hof schauten und sich an den Ruf des Ayatollahs erinnerten, jeden zu denunzieren, der konterrevolutionäres Gedankengut in seinen Regalen verwahrte. Selbst Saadi und Hafez hielten sie für konterrevolutionär. Neben dem Feuer lagen die Maiskolben, die Alibi-Maiskolben. Und bis heute muss ich an Besards Mutter denken, wenn ich Maiskolben koche, denn diese Alibi-Maiskolben schauten mich an, stumpf, glänzend und so rein und gelb, wie sie nur sein konnten, und sagten mir, dass sie heute nicht gegessen würden und dass es seltsame Zeiten seien, in denen wir leben.
We hid the books under her skirt, the old Persian poems and the political manifestos, Maxim Gorky's works, and the children's stories by Samad Berangi. This stately old lady, whose hand I sometimes kissed, before whom I always stooped a little so I wouldn't be taller than her, whose hand always trembled in mine, and I couldn't tell Bazard. He needed to see for himself that his mother's hand trembled, always. How close I was to her as she sat in her chair in the yard in front of the fire. I felt her breath, her warmth, smelled her scent as I gradually hid the books under her skirt so the neighbours wouldn't notice if they looked into the yard and recalled the Ayatollah's instruction to denounce anyone who kept counter-revolutionary thought on their shelves. They even classed Saadi and Hafez as counter-revolutionary. The corn cobs lay beside the fire, the alibi corn cobs. And to this day, cooking corn on the cob makes me think of Bezard's mother, because these alibi corn cobs looked at me, gleaming dully and as pure and as yellow as could be, and told me they would not be eaten today. And these were strange times we were living in.
Shada, you come from an Iranian family, obviously. It was your parents who left Iran. And that sort of departure, exile, is something that parents don't normally talk about with their children. It's very, very, very difficult for them. This is a book that's about exile, longing, memory, the incredible pain and anxiety about not forgetting. How did you set about capturing these very, very amorphous, untouchable things?
Yes, I talked with my parents about it for the first time because I did not know so many details about why did I have to leave country, what did they think, what did they feel. So it was new to me, but although I talked with my parents, these were not personal conversations. It was more like we surrounded a professional setting, like a voice recorder and a kitchen table. And
so you interviewed them?
Yeah, and I interviewed them as a writer, not as a daughter, or we pretended it. And I'm pretty sure they kept some secrets for themselves as well, which is fine, because it was about writing a novel about a fictional family. And I had to let it sink in. I had to deal with it on a personal level, but then I wanted to create a new story, not about my parents, but to a family who's similar to, seems to be similar to my family. And my way of working was to visualize a lot, to listen to these interviews, to write it down, to put it on the wall. It's kind of a cliche of a writer, but I don't write like this. It was especially for the parts of 1979, the things they told me about it, to get a picture of it and to decide what are the points I want to tell about and where's the moment I can get creative to not make it so personal.
You mentioned 1979, obviously a very, very, very crucial year. The book has a very clever structure. It takes 1 year in each decade. 1979, the year that the Shah fled Iran, the Ayatollah Khomeini took power, 1989, 1999, and then 2009, the year of the Green Revolution that was suppressed. Was that structure always there in your mind from the beginning, or how did it evolve for you? I've never seen that before. It's really interesting.
In the beginning, I thought I want to write more about the revolution, about 1979, about a person. Maybe my father used to be a communist person who really believed in his political ideas. And when I started with research, I noticed I can't do this because I know what happened afterwards. I know more than my character. I know what happened with Iran, and I know about all these crimes the Islamic Republic committed, and especially about this so-called Green Wave 2009, like there were large protests and people really went on the streets and were really brave and tried to change something, and it was brutally oppressed. And that was something I had in mind. I thought, okay, it's about 30 years I want to write about, and I want to write about the next generation. I want to write about differences between genders, and I had to find a structure. And I remember the moment I sat in a train and I was thinking about it, and suddenly it occurred to me that it's a coincidence of history that 1979 and 2009 are 30 years in between. And I thought maybe I don't have to write about a whole story. I don't have to tell the whole story from the beginning till the end. Maybe it's also a way to say, this is one point I write about, and this is one point. And then I noticed that 1989, of course, that's also the year Ayatollah Khamenei died. A lot of people thought things will change, but it was also a time a lot of people had to flee from Iran. And 1999, on the other side, it was a period in the end of the 90s. Some people were brave enough to get back, like the family in my book, they traveled back for the first time. And so somehow it was history itself that gave me the structure, or I found it in history. Yeah.
Ruth, I want to ask you about creating atmosphere and translation. I mean, some of the book is set in Germany. Its real heart, of course, is in Iran, which you've never visited. How, as a translator, do you keep the balance between two places so that one place doesn't overwhelm the other in the sense that the reader picks up of the atmosphere?
Well, I mean, you start with good writing. That really helps.
But in fact, what a translator does is not just do AI word for word. You are also a writer. You've written 2 books, the two of you. So there is, the beginning is great writing, but to which is added.
Yes, and actually, I think that balance, that sense of being between worlds as well, is one of the things that really appealed to me about the book originally. And I think that balance between Iran and Germany is slightly different in English, just by virtue of it being a translation, because for the German reader, all of the German things are self-evident, and the Iranian things feel foreign. But actually, for an English reader, both of those have a foreign aspect to them.
Yes.
And for example, where Nahid, who's the mother, is starting to learn German and talking about, the words feel dusty and dry. And then I've left some of the German words in the books that she is learning, which obviously to a German reader, there's nothing strange about that, but we're viewing those with different eyes, I think. So the book does change in translation because we are different readers.
And there's an atmosphere of sound as well. It's not just, there's music, there's street sound, there's food sound. Tell us a little bit about how music, listening to music of a particular place helps you in translation, because I know that you listen to.
I do, yes. I mean, I love to immerse myself in the world of a book that I'm translating. So wherever it's set, I will be listening to the music and eating the food and looking at a lot of images as well of the place. And if it's possible, I like to walk around somewhere that I'm unfamiliar with on Google Street View and just kind of walk down the roads and look at what's happening either side. And I think you can tell when someone has just translated the words on the page without having that
deeper understanding of what the book actually feels like, that sensory experience.
Shada Baziar and Ruth Martin, thank you both so much. Now, Ana Paula Maia is the author of the Brazilian novel On Earth as It Is Beneath. Rahul Berry, a noted translator himself, will be her interpreter this evening. Sadly, Padma Viswanathan, the translator of the book itself, can't be here in person, but we will hear from her later on. Please welcome Ana Maria Paula, along with Rahul Berry, who will be interpreting her for tonight.
Good evening. Pouco havia restado, fossem homens ou animais. Enxadas e foices permanecem largadas nos cantos das plantações ressequidas pela falta de chuva. Um córrego estreito e mal cheiroso fornece água, porém mingua visivelmente dia após dia, sugado pelo calor intenso que o evapora e deixa o ar úmido e pesado. Ainda há movimentação no galinheiro e alguns grunhidos na pocilga, o que garante carne na panela para os próximos dias. No mais, a escassez preocupa. Aguardo uma ordem, um comboio que virá buscá-los e levá-los a outra parte, mas a consternação aumenta desde que a comunicação com o lado de fora dos muros silenciou. As linhas telefônicas estão interrompidas há dias e a última notícia que tiveram é que um oficial de justiça vai chegar ao local para uma inspeção final e os conduzirá ao destino seguinte. De acordo com os cálculos, o oficial está atrasado em pelo menos 7 dias. Isso aumenta vertiginosamente o sentimento de angústia. Tudo o que fazem é aguardar. Valdênio abana, com seu chapéu de palha, algumas moscas que voejam em torno da carcaça do vira-lata seco, de costelas à mostra. Há dias que se alimentam dele. Morreu doente, com uma úlcera na barriga que se expandiu e o apodreceu gradativamente. O cão lambia a própria ferida, contemplava com tristeza e algum assombro sua carne definhar. A ferida surgiu pequena, do tamanho de uma verruga acobreada. Aos poucos, o cão foi se tornando mais quieto e sua euforia com as sobras da cozinha foi diminuindo. Valdênio cozinhava um mingau para o cão quando este deixou de se alimentar. Por tão fraco, sua mordedura fragilizada já não triturava mais nada. Untou a ferida com algumas ervas e pólvora. Mas não era o suficiente. Fazia 2 dias, procurava pelo cão sumido. Morreu debaixo de uma árvore com pouca folhagem. Valdênio pega a enxada caída próximo dali e abre um buraco raso onde coloca o cão esquelético, cobrindo-o com a terra. Ao longe, um homem grita seu nome e acena para ele. Valdênio, ajoelhado, termina de espetar no solo avermelhado uma pequena cruz feita com 2 gravetos. Levanta-se e caminha puxando a perna esquerda, apoiando-se numa bengala de madeira. Sim, senhor, diz Valdênio. Melquiades quer falar com você, diz Taborda. Valdênio vira-se para seguir o escritório de Melquiades quando Taborda o questiona sobre o cão. Vão sentir falta daquele cachorro, comenta Taborda. Todos nós, senhor. Nunca achei que fosse me apegar a um vira-lata tão vagabundo. Valdênio conserva-se em silêncio, atento ao semblante doloroso do agente penitenciário. Aguarda que este levante os olhos e lhe dê permissão para ir até o escritório de Melquiades, agente superior e a maior autoridade dentro dos muros. Acho que é isso que acontece com a gente num lugar como esse. A gente acaba assim, se apegando a qualquer trapo. Taborda lança o olhar, aguardando por Valdênio, que, apoiado na bengala, caminha devagar em direção à sala da diretoria, localizada no pavilhão central. Melquiades está sentado à sua frente, à sua mesa, com as mangas da camisa arregaçadas e o botão do colarinho desbotado. De braços e pés cruzados, parece tão somente aguardar, sabe-se lá o quê. Pois não, senhor.
Okay. Little is left, men or animals. Hoes and sickles lie where they were dropped, in the corners of fields dried up for lack of rain. A narrow, stinking creek provides water, but it dwindles visibly day by day, sucked dry by the fierce heat evaporating it, making the air humid and heavy. There's still movement in the chicken coop, and occasional grunts from the pig pen guaranteeing meat in the pot for the next few days. Beyond that, the scarcity is worrying. They're awaiting orders, a convoy to come take them somewhere else, but consternation's been growing since they lost contact with the outside. The phone lines had been down for days, but last they heard, an official was coming out to do a final inspection and drive them to their next stop. According to their calculations, the official's at least 7 days late, causing a steep increase in anxiety. All they can do is wait. Valdenio uses his straw hat to swat at flies circling the much-shriveled carcass, its jutting ribs. They've been feeding off it for days. It died sick with a sore in its belly that gradually expanded, rotting it. It'd lick its own wound, contemplating its withering flesh with sadness and a kind of wonder. The wound started small, about the size of a wart, coppery. The dog got more and more subdued, and its excitement over kitchen leftovers dropped off. Valdenio was making gruel for it by the time it stopped eating, so weakened its feeble jaws could no longer chew. He'd smeared the wound with herbs and gunpowder, but it wasn't enough. He spent 2 days searching for it when it went missing. It had died under a nearly leafless tree. Valdenio grabs a hoe lying nearby and digs a shallow pit where he places the skeletal animal, covering it with earth. In the distance, a man shouts his name, beckoning him. Valdenio, on his knees, finishes sticking a small cross made of 2 twigs onto the red dirt. He gets up and makes his way over, dragging his left leg, leaning on a wooden cane. "Yes, sir," he says. "Melquiades wants to talk to you," says Taborda. Valdenio is turning towards Melquiades' office when Taborda asks him about the dog. "I'm going to miss that pup," Taborda remarks. "All of us will, sir." Never thought I'd get so attached to a mutt like that. Valdenio keeps quiet, noticing the prison guard's sad expression. He waits for him to look up and give him permission to go see Melquiades, the superior officer and highest authority inside the walls. "Guess that's what happens to people in a place like this. You end up latching onto any old scrap." Taborda finally gives him the nod, and Valdenio, leaning on his cane, walks slowly towards the main office, located in the central pavilion. Melquiades is at his desk, sleeves rolled up and collar unbuttoned, arms and legs crossed, waiting for God knows what. "Can I help you, sir?"
Well, there's something about Brazilian Portuguese that is so wonderful to listen to. It's like listening to samba. Ana Paula, what is it about writing in Brazil at the moment? And not just writing, but cinema as well. I mean, there's something, we get the feeling that there's something happening in Brazil. That Brazil is having a kind of moment. Or is it that we've only just discovered this in Britain?
Eu acho que a gente tem vivido momento de despertar do Brasil para fora do Brasil. O Brasil é país, não somente país muito grande, mas há muitos países dentro do Brasil e múltiplas culturas.
Is this working? Yeah. Ana Paula says that we're experiencing a momentum of awakening outside of Brazil with regards to Brazil and Brazilian culture. Brazil is a big country, but it's also it's so many different cultures and kind of countries within countries.
E eu acho que a partir do momento em que a gente começa a ser traduzido, nossos filmes assistidos, essa multiplicidade cultural reverbera em muitos outros lugares, como aqui, como em países também vizinhos da América Latina. E eu acho que é uma efervescência que ocorre num momento muito particular de globalização.
So it's also just to do with the kind of process of things becoming more international. So books happen to be translated. I'm adding this, but Ana Paula's book was published 9 years ago, for example. So it's not that contemporary in that regard, but there's a moment of things coming together. Obviously, this year we've had The Secret Agent and films as well, things like that. And then it's not just in the Anglosphere as well, like around Latin America, there's maybe more cohesion between the Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking countries.
Let's talk about the book. It's set in a prison, in a remote area. It's a sort of, it's a real prison, but it's also a mythological prison. What was it about prison life, particularly, that you wanted to reflect on?
eu tinha muita vontade de escrever sobre o sistema carcerário, sobre o sistema prisional no Brasil, porque os meus livros, em geral, eu sempre mantenho uma relação do homem com o trabalho. É como o trabalho nos aprisiona e como o trabalho cotidiano repetitivo molda o nosso caráter.
So Anna Paula says she always wanted to write about prisons, and specifically because one of her major preoccupations is the relationship between men and humans and work, and how obviously work kind of does imprison us, but also kind of molds your character, whether you like it or not.
E quando eu começo a escrever sobre o sistema penitenciário, eu vou descobrindo muito mais, porque eu descubro as Américas com uma história muito parecida de extermínio indígena, da questão da escravidão, dos africanos. Então, eu percebi que não era um recorte não só do Brasil, mas um recorte de todas as Américas. E a história foi se expandindo, porque eu acredito que, em muitos momentos, essa colônia penal representada no livro, ela se reflete aqui fora também.
So it's also kind of a metaphor for the history of not just Brazil, but the whole of Latin America for some reason, which is most countries to some degree were built on two foundations of indigenous genocide and extermination and slavery. And Ana Paula sees the kind of, the penal colony, as it were, as a kind of metaphor for the colonization on which the modern Americas post-16th century are founded.
Now, we've heard in different ways about cinematic qualities, storytelling. A number of people have mentioned it this evening. Now, you are actually a scriptwriter as well as a novelist. How does scriptwriting influence your storytelling on the page?
A escrita de roteiros para o cinema veio depois da literatura. E quem lê meus roteiros diz que eles são muito literários, tem muito de literatura. E quem lê meus livros diz que tem muito de cinema nos meus livros.
So for Ana Paula, writing scripts comes like second to writing literature. At the same time, she thinks her screenwriting is very literary, and her novels are very cinematic.
Então, eu acredito que eu faço essa fusão de estilos e de gêneros porque o cinema influenciou muito a minha literatura. O próprio livro, esse livro em questão, tem uma influência muito forte também do cinema. Então, e também de alguns livros. Então, em geral, a minha literatura, todo o meu trabalho, ele se funde cinema e literatura sempre.
So Ana Paula sees this book in particular as a very filmic book, but her whole kind of project as a writer is a fusion of cinema and literature.
Now to tell us about translating On Earth as It Is Beneath is Padma Viswanathan, who was filmed earlier this month in the US.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sure this is a lovely evening. I'm so sorry that I can't be there, but hello from Arkansas, and I'm thinking of all of you tonight, and very happy to speak on Ana Paula's On Earth as It Is Beneath. I had already read Ana Paula's first book in English of Cattle and Men in Zoe Perry's translation when I was asked to do the book that became On Earth as It Is Beneath. And so I had a sense of Ana Paula's dark and yet poignant and often humorous universe. And so I was intrigued when I first started reading the book. And I made the choice, as I recall, to read it for the first time while trying to translate it, to enter into that deep engagement with the book on my first reading. And I found it pulling me forward. The characters, first of all, Valdenio, Brancogio, Ana Paula has this talent to make men in extremely difficult, straitened circumstances with they're laconic, they're emotionally muted in many ways, often ironic and deeply sympathetic. And so that was really the first thing that struck me as I went through. And of course, the closer I got, or once I passed the midpoint of the book, the thing that was pulling me forward is, how is this all going to resolve? What is going to happen? Because as those of you who have read the book know, it gets pretty suspenseful at a certain point. I have realized that one of the things that attracts me to translation is the chance to speak in the voices of other writers. Again, even in my own fiction, I have tried with greater or lesser success to speak in the voices of diverse characters, but translation is the greatest challenge that way, the greatest opportunity to do so. That is trying to channel literally another author's voice into English. I think of the process of draft after draft as descending deeper and deeper into the book and then being able to speak from that deep place of immersion.
Anna Paula Meyer and Rahul Berry, thank you both very, very much. And across the distance, thank you also to Padma Viswanathan. So our last book tonight is The Director by Daniel Kellman, translated by Ross Benjamin. This book has been translated into multiple languages and it's had an extraordinary reception across Europe. Can I ask you, Daniel, to read from your original and Ross from your translation?
Good evening. Der Minister legte seine Hände flach auf die Tischplatte, lächelte und sagte, der rote Papst. Papst wurde es schwindlig. Ich höre, sagte der Minister. Bitte, nun? Papst rieb sich die Schläfen. Kommen Sie, sagte der Minister. Sie wollten mich sprechen, ich höre. Sie haben mich rufen lassen. Und? Bitte, ich höre. Papst begriff nicht. Was meinte dieser Mann? Was wollte er? Dieser Mann, mit dem er einst in einem Leben, das unwiderruflich vorbei war, nicht einmal 3 Sätze gesprochen hätte und den er von seinem Filmset hätte jagen lassen, wenn er es gewagt hätte, dort aufzutauchen. Sie spielen die Unschuld vom Lande, sagte der Minister. Na bitte, des Menschen Wille ist sein Himmelreich. Es gibt halt Dinge, die gesagt werden und Dinge, die nicht gesagt werden. Papst verstand nicht. Also, gesagt wird, dass Sie hier zu mir gekommen sind. Der rote Papst, der kommunistische Regisseur, der linke Held. Ich bin kein nicht gesagt wird. Bitte, dass ich Sie habe rufen lassen. Weil es besser ist, wenn Sie von sich aus gekommen sind. Ein wenig besser für mich, aber vor allem auch besser für Sie. Der Minister sah ihn lächelnd an. Papst, dem nichts anderes zu tun einfiel, nickte. Und, fragte der Minister, was wollen Sie?
The minister laid his hands flat on the desktop, smiled, and said, "The red Papst." Papst felt dizzy. "I'm listening," said the minister. "Excuse me?" "Well?" Papst rubbed his temples. "Go ahead," said the minister. "You wanted to speak to me? I'm listening." "I didn't. You sent for me." "And?" "Excuse me? I'm listening." Papst didn't understand. What did this man mean? What did he want? This man to whom once, in a life that was irrevocably over, he would never have spoken a word and whom he would have had chased off his set if he had dared to show up there. "You're playing the innocent country boy," said the minister. "Fine, have it your way. There are things that are said and things that are not said." Papst didn't understand. "So what's said is that you came here to me, the red Papst, the communist director, the left-wing hero. I'm not. What's not said, please, is that I sent for you, because it's better if you came of your own accord, a little better for me, but above all, better for you." The minister looked at him with a smile. Pabst, who couldn't think of anything else to do, nodded. So, asked the minister, what do you want?
The director has many things, but it is probably mostly a morality tale, a tale about political complicity. Daniel, did you understand when you wrote this, and this is quite a long time ago now because it's been out in German for a long time and then it's been translated, did you understand how brutally current it was going to become?
It's not that long, it's 2 years, so it's not in, I didn't write it in a different world, but it was a different world. I didn't think some of the things that happened, I didn't think they would happen when I wrote it. I was influenced by spending the first Trump presidency in the United States, but I didn't think there would be a second Trump presidency. And I mean, morality tale, I can only accept that with the caveat that there is no clear lesson to be learned from it. I mean, Pabst is obviously making lots of wrong choices, but still it's hard to say where exactly does he go wrong. And that was my idea of the book, that it's a long path into a very dark place, and that leads him into a very dark place, but it is very hard to say where exactly does he turn wrong. And so, yes, it's about complicity. It's about a man who is a great artist, and being a great artist gives him the opportunity to justify everything that he does in a way. And he ends up making films for the Nazis and begins his, when we meet him early in the book, he's actually in Hollywood, in a place where many where actually what's for most exiles, for most refugees, it was so hard to even get to America, and then to be in Hollywood and to be employed is kind of very, very few of them even managed to get there. And he got there easily as one of the great directors in the world, and it went terribly wrong because Hollywood didn't treat directors well back then. It didn't treat Pabst well. And so he ended up in Nazi Germany. And I thought this is such a uniquely strange story that this would be my opportunity as a storyteller, my way with Pabst. I, as a storyteller, could also go back step by step into that dark world. And the important thing was also to get the details right. So that's also, it's true that it, in a way, people read it as something about what's happening now where parts of our world are really going. But I really believe that the universal in literature is always the very specific. So I tried to really get it right, what it was like in everyday life to live not in some abstract totalitarian state, but in that very real, specific totalitarian state that the Nazis created. And
it is very, very much a book about the making of film.
Yes, that too.
About creating a scene, placing the actors, pointing the camera, and then there's all the splicing and editing. And I mean, in what ways is writing a novel like filmmaking?
It can be like filmmaking. I mean, there are many, many ways to write novels. And one of the reasons, and a lot of things have to come together to form a novel. A novel is a very complex entity, but one of the many things that came together for me was that not just my father was a director, I spent a lot of time on movie sets, on film sets, TV films growing up. So I felt like I actually know what it's like, but also I had done some stuff for film in the last few years, and I have been film has become very important to me as part of my work also. And but what I really am is a novelist. So I felt like I could let this shape my writing in many ways. And so there are lots of, not just film techniques in general in that novel, but especially film images and techniques from the 20s and from the silent movies. And also, I mean, if you write about someone, if you have a main character who is a great storyteller in his own right, in the case of Pabst, then you should be influenced by the art and the storytelling and the techniques of that. And I mean, my protagonist is obviously a character from a novel, but it's a novel based on that real person, G.W. Pabst. And so, of course, his films had to shape the novel in many ways.
The basic subject, let alone the background, is quite dark. The book is actually incredibly funny. Ross, tell us about the essentials of translating humour, because actually you kind of think humour doesn't really cross borders or cross languages, but you made it work.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so it's translating humor. It's just trying to be funny is very hard, right? Trying to be funny in a way that actually does justice to what's funny about something to you and something you read, it presents an extra challenge for sure. In this book, it was also an additional challenge that the humor is so intimately entwined with the horror. So the moments that are funny, it's not like some clownish moments of comic relief exactly. It's more like as things become very grotesque and horrible, the comic comes through in the sort of nightmarish unreality of these moments. And so it was important to calibrate it just right, to not kind of hit the reader over the head with a comic moment as if it's supposed to be a release from the tension of the book always, or to signpost too much when the tone's going to shift abruptly, but rather to figure out just the right, as a translator, you always kind of have options of either toning something up or toning it down, and here I wanted to do neither. I really wanted to get just that right. A lot of these moments sort of hover on the edge of funny or horrible. You don't necessarily know which way to go, even as a reader reacting to it. And so it wasn't so straightforward as like, here's a very funny book, so I've just got to be over the top funny in the translation, and I could even amplify it. It was more, okay, that's a little too much. Let me try to bring it back down. Now it's been too diluted and flattened. I have to find a new way. So it was very much trial and error, and even sometimes going in the wrong direction for an entire chapter, and realizing this chapter's too silly now, and we have to tone it back down because it doesn't fit in a book of this seriousness. And yet, I can't let the humor disappear. So,
there's something else which is also sort of connected with this, which is that all these characters live in an atmosphere of constant mutual surveillance and fear. They're always watching each other, whether it's in the film industry in Hollywood or whether it's in Nazi Germany. I mean, as a translator, how do you connect? How do you find that thread that connects between what is being said on the surface with what's actually really going on underneath?
Yeah, and that's probably the chapter that haunts me most in this novel, which is a chapter about a book circle, a book club, where Pabst's wife is attending a book club with, and she's extremely, averse sounds too weak. She's horrified by the situation that she's in Nazi Germany, but also terrified, and she has to attend a book club with the wives of like all the Reich elite. And they're talking about a regime-approved bestseller that is just terrible, and she knows it's a terrible book. But she has to be very careful what she says because it's truly dangerous, and so do all the other women in the book club have to be careful what they're saying. And yet what they're doing is kind of, on the surface, just ordinary book club chatter, gossip, name dropping, and yet here the stakes are so high, so if you drop the wrong name, you might accidentally be dropping a name of somebody who was the right name to drop 2 weeks ago, but now could get you in huge trouble, like life-threatening trouble. And so the ordinary surface of dialogue had to be preserved with these kind of hairline fractures of hesitations or of catching themselves mid-sentence before they said something wrong, and some characters end up tripping over themselves and really saying the wrong thing. They're also discussing like the porcelain, and it slowly registers with the reader. I hope it's not a spoiler, but that there's something about the porcelain that must remain unsaid, and there's characters who just keep coming too close to saying, I feel I've seen this type of porcelain before, and you start as a reader to suspect that there's that this could be looted property.
Before you
spoil
give it away.
Too much plot.
Thank you, Daniel Kalman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ross Benjamin. And now that we've got to the end of the books, I'd like to invite all of tonight's authors, interpreters, translators, come back on the stage, and let's give you a really big round of applause. I'm going to move right over here and try not to fall off. There we go. Sadly, that is all we have time for tonight. Thank you all so much for coming and for supporting this year's shortlisted authors and translators. The winner of the International Booker Prize 2026 will be announced on Tuesday, that's May the 19th, at a ceremony at Tate Modern, London. And you can tune into the live stream, if you're not in London, via the Booker Prize's YouTube channel from 10 o'clock. Now, those of you who know me know that I am the eldest of 8 sisters, and my sisters like to say that I'm really bossy, but I promise you I'm not being bossy when I tell you that all the shortlisted books are available to buy from our partners, Story Smith Books and Gloucester Road Books, in the foyer, 1 floor down, and that's also where the authors and translators will be signing. As Polly told you, it's a little bit sort of different places, but there will be people to tell you where to go. And don't forget that the nicest thing you can do for an author and a translator, seriously, the nicest thing you can do for them is to buy their book. We'll see you over there.